3 shocking true romance scams. Imagine opening your heart to a stranger, only to have it shattered by a web of deceit. In the next few minutes, we unveil 3 true stories that defy belief. A widow who entrusted millions to a ghost, a retired lecturer seduced by an AI-crafted illusion, and a gentle soul lured deep into digital betrayal. How did these carefully constructed lies captivate vulnerable hearts? And what dark truths are lurking behind the facades? Stay tuned. This is a journey into the shadowy side of love that you won't want to miss. The Widow and the Lie. How a romance scam stole $2 million and a life. In the quiet town of Galena, Illinois, Laura Koval was known for her warmth. At 57, she was a proud mother, a successful retired healthcare executive, and a woman learning to live again after the death of her husband. She smiled often, stayed active in her community, and adored her daughter, Emily. By all appearances, life was steady, until she met a man named Frank. Frank Borg, he said his name was. Tall, refined, and full of charm. His Match.com profile showed him dressed in a suit, a glass of wine in hand, framed by the Paris skyline. A widower too, he claimed. A loving father. A U.S. diplomat currently posted overseas. Like Laura, he was looking for someone genuine, someone real. He seemed perfect. Their online messages turned into long, late-night phone calls. Frank told stories about foreign affairs and raising his teenage daughter alone. Laura, vulnerable but open-hearted, found herself laughing again. Hope crept in. She hadn't expected to feel this kind of connection so soon, maybe ever again. And then, subtly, the tide began to shift. Frank said he had a problem. His daughter needed emergency surgery in Berlin. He was caught in bureaucratic red tape and couldn't access his funds quickly. Could Laura help? Just a small wire transfer. He promised to pay her back right away. Laura hesitated. But love, especially the kind we think we'll never find again, can blur the line between caution and compassion. She sent the money. It was the first of many transfers. A web of lies. Over the next 2 years, Laura sent hundreds of payments totaling nearly $2 million. Frank's emergencies kept coming. Bank freezes, stolen documents, unexpected hospital bills, diplomatic delays. Every time Laura voiced doubt, Frank soothed her. He sent romantic notes, old-fashioned love songs, and even photos, though always just shy of video calls or live meetings. Laura began hiding the situation from her daughter and friends. The shame of how deep she was in was overwhelming. But even when suspicion flickered in her mind, she'd remember the hours they'd spent talking, the promises, the feeling of not being alone. Eventually, Laura sold her home, liquidated retirement accounts, borrowed money, all to keep the illusion alive. What she didn't know was that Frank Borg didn't exist. His photos were stolen from an unsuspecting Italian businessman. His accent on calls, faked. Behind the voice was a network of romance scammers based in West Africa, orchestrating dozens of similar cons. Each message Laura received was scripted, each emergency manufactured. But to her, Frank was real, because the love felt real. And in scams like this, that is the hook, the breaking point. In the summer of 2020, Laura finally told her daughter Emily something was wrong. Her words were fragmented, emotional. She admitted she had fallen in love with someone online, and now she feared he wasn't who he said he was, that the money might be gone, that she was scared. Emily, shocked, immediately got to work. She contacted law enforcement, ran image searches, and discovered the truth in hours. Frank's face appeared on scam alert websites. The heartbreak was devastating for both women. But Laura wasn't angry. She was humiliated. "I feel like I've lost myself," she told Emily. She agreed to report it. She said she was done, that she was going to fight. They thought it was over. The river. Just 2 days after opening up to her daughter, Laura left a voicemail. "I love you more than life itself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Then silence. Her car was found near the Mississippi River. Inside, her purse, her ID, her phone. Her body was recovered days later. The coroner ruled it a drowning. Suicide. The grief shattered Emily's world. But beneath the heartbreak, there was also rage. Her mother had been targeted, isolated, emotionally manipulated, and ultimately destroyed by professional scammers who knew exactly how to play on grief, trust, and hope. And they were still out there. The aftermath. The FBI began tracing the transactions Laura had made. Investigators uncovered a West African-based romance scam ring that had targeted multiple women, especially widows and retirees. The money Laura sent had been laundered through US-based money mules, then funneled overseas. In 2022, 3 men involved in the scam were sentenced in a federal court. But none of them were the voice Laura knew as Frank. That man, the one who whispered promises, who strung her along for 2 years, has never been identified. Emily, determined to make her mother's story matter, began sharing it publicly. She joined advocacy groups and worked with federal investigators to raise awareness about romance scams. She spoke at events, on podcasts, and in front of Congress. Her message was always the same. Asterisk, these people are experts. They aren't amateurs in their mom's basement. They know how to target, how to manipulate, and how to isolate. My mother wasn't foolish. She was lonely, and they took everything from her, even her life. A growing epidemic. Laura's story isn't unique. According to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, romance scams cost victims over $1.3 billion in 2022 alone, making it one of the most financially devastating forms of online fraud. And most of the victims? Women over 50, often widowed, often lonely, just like Laura. Scammers use detailed playbooks, often posing as military personnel, engineers overseas, or diplomats. They avoid video calls, use stolen images, and manufacture emotional urgency. And they do it all with chilling patience. Some victims never recover financially, others emotionally, and some, like Laura, lose far more. A mirage of affection. Nikki McLeod's encounter with an AI deepfake. Nikki McLeod never thought that in her 77 years, the digital world could steal from her in such a silent, calculated way. A retired lecturer from Edinburgh University, known among her peers for her inquisitive mind and keen sense of history, Nikki had always embraced life's opportunities, even those that emerged in unexpected forms. She had delved into online communities to stay connected with former students and colleagues, and, like many others, found that the virtual world could offer companionship that defied age and distance. It all began on a chilly autumn evening. The amber streetlights of Edinburgh shimmered outside her modest flat, their reflections dancing against the damp cobblestones. Inside, Nikki sat wrapped in a warm shawl, browsing her Facebook feed. Among the myriad posts and updates, a friend request caught her eye. It came from a profile named Alla Morgan, a sophisticated name paired with a profile picture that exuded grace and mystery. The photo was captivating. Alla, draped in a classic, elegant outfit, with eyes that seemed to hold untold secrets of a far-off world. Nikki hesitated for a moment before accepting the request. After all, in this digital era, new connections could mean new stories. She sent a friendly message, and soon enough, the conversation began. Alla's words were articulate, thoughtful, and imbued with a kind of gentle humor that warmed Nikki's heart. Their chats, initially brief and cautious, quickly deepened into long, winding conversations that stretched long into the night. Through texts and occasional phone calls, Nikki found herself sharing tales of her academic pursuits, her travels, and the bittersweet memories of a life filled with both sorrow and joy. Alla, in return, painted a picture of a person who was worldly, cultured, and emotionally in tune. Someone who, Nikki felt, understood loneliness without judgment. For weeks, their connection blossomed. Nikki would wait eagerly for the chime of a new notification. The messages came laden with poetic phrases and assurances of a gentle, abiding connection. Alla spoke of her own dreams, her wanderlust, and of a past marked by adventures in faraway lands. In a particularly memorable exchange, Alla described watching the sunrise over the Mediterranean, where the light danced on the sea like notes from a long-forgotten symphony. Nikki, whose life had been woven with the rich textures of academia and literature, found herself enchanted by such imagery. But as time passed, subtle cracks began to form in the perfect veneer of their virtual romance. It was late one winter evening, with the wind howling outside like a chorus of lost voices, that Alla suggested a new step in their burgeoning relationship. A video message. Nikki, accustomed to the text and call, felt a flutter of excitement mixed with trepidation. Would the person behind the eloquent words match the sparkling image she had built in her mind? When the video arrived, Nikki was immediately struck by the lifelike clarity of Alla's face and the unmistakable charm in her voice. The recording felt intimate, as if Alla had sat down just for her, looking directly into the camera with eyes that shone with a warm sincerity. The video was not long, just a few minutes of conversation, but it was enough to dissolve any lingering doubt. After that, the assurance of Alla's presence in her life grew stronger. Yet, beneath that veneer of authenticity, something was amiss, a secret hidden within layers of digital craft. Unknown to Nikki, the video was not a genuine capture of a loving soul, but rather the product of advanced AI technology. Using deepfake techniques, the scam operators had constructed an illusion of affection so convincing that even those seasoned by life's disappointments could be deceived. In the bustling web of data, her connection with Alla was nothing more than a meticulously programmed performance, designed to elicit trust and, ultimately, submission. As their relationship deepened, Alla began to share snippets of her life that, on the surface, appeared realistic and relatable. She spoke of a bustling life in an exotic city, of business meetings that ran late into the night, and of family obligations that always came first. Nikki's empathy was continually stirred by Alla's apparent vulnerability. A sense of kinship grew. After all, loneliness had been a long-time companion for Nikki too. One crisp morning, amidst the soft drizzle over Edinburgh, Alla sent a message that marked a turning point in their story. In it, she expressed regret over a recent misunderstanding with a business associate, a misunderstanding that had left her in a precarious financial spot. "I'm truly sorry if I sound desperate," the message read, "but I find myself in a situation I never anticipated. I need help to settle this matter, and I promise I will return every penny." Nikki, whose heart was already tender from years of solitary battles and unspoken grief, didn't hesitate. She reached for her checkbook, the lines on her face betraying both the strain of time and the anxiety of the moment. The first transaction was small, a gesture of goodwill and trust. Nikki wired a modest sum, thinking that perhaps Alla's troubles were temporary, a minor bump in an otherwise unpredictable life. But as the days turned into weeks, the appeals grew louder and more frequent. Each message from Alla painted a bleaker picture than the last, punctuated by promises of future repayment and heartfelt apologies for the inconvenience. Nikki's correspondence with Alla became the center of her daily routine. In between tending to her garden and preparing tea for one, she would sit by her window, scrolling through their long chat history, a tapestry of shared confidences and expressed emotions. Every time a new message arrived, it was like unwrapping a small parcel of affection, a reminder that she was not alone in a world that often felt indifferent. Unbeknownst to Nikki, behind every transfer and every late-night conversation, the operators behind the scam were meticulously orchestrating the illusion. They monitored the amount sent, adjusted their stories, and perfected their digital mimicry to keep the facade of authenticity intact. The funds, totaling £17,000 over several months, flowed steadily from Nikki's bank account to offshore accounts, disappearing into the labyrinth of international digital finance. The turning point came on a cold, damp evening in early spring. Nikki, wrapped in her favorite cardigan, waited for a call from Alla that never came. Her messages went unanswered, and a creeping sense of unease began to overshadow the warm memories of their shared moments. With a sinking feeling, Nikki realized that she had reached out repeatedly, only to be met with silence, a silence so profound that it echoed the hollow spaces in her heart. The truth, when it eventually surfaced, hit Nikki like a violent gust of wind across a barren moor. A friend, noticing her distress, shared an article about AI deepfake scams that had been making headlines. As she read through, a cold dread settled over her. Details that mirrored her own experience. The same names, the same promises. Her stomach churned with the bitter realization Alla Morgan had never been real. In that agonizing moment, Nikki felt the weight of betrayal. A woman who had given her trust so freely, who had painted dreams with the brush of digital deception, had now left her stranded on the shores of disillusionment. The emotional devastation was profound, and the loss of £17,000 seemed to represent far more than financial ruin. It was the shattering of hope and the corroding of a spirit that had once dared to believe in love again. Haunted by the echoes of their late-night conversations and the warm glow of a friendship she thought was genuine, Nikki began a slow, painful process of coming to terms with the betrayal. Each day was a struggle, marked by sleepless nights and moments of deep introspection. She found herself revisiting every message, every video, desperate to unpick the threads of the deception and find some remnant of truth amid the illusions. One afternoon, as soft rain pattered against the window pane, Nikki sat at her old desk, the one filled with notes from her academic days, and began to write. It started as a diary entry, a cathartic outpouring of emotions: anger, sorrow, regret, and a faint spark of determination. With each word, she relived the glimmering moments of hope that had been so cruelly manipulated by a faceless operator hidden behind an AI-generated guise. There were days when the wound felt too raw, when the betrayal seemed to define every corner of her memory. The images of Allah, so vibrant and real in those initial videos, haunted her with their unreal perfection. Nikki remembered the smile, the glint in those digitally crafted eyes, and the soft timbre of a voice that had once promised that she wasn't alone. Now, each recollection was bittersweet, a reminder of trust misplaced and the cruelty of technology exploited. Friends rallied around her in the aftermath. While some offered comforting words and sympathetic glances, others shared similar stories, lamenting the increasing sophistication of online scams. Nikki listened to their accounts with a heavy heart, realizing that her ordeal was part of a larger epidemic, one that preyed on those who dared to reach out in search of connection. In the quiet moments of reflection, she confronted a difficult but necessary truth. The digital world, with all its potential for connection, also harbored dangers that were hard to predict or understand. Nikki recognized that the warmth she had found in her correspondence with Allah was too beautiful, too fragile, to be left unguarded. And yet, how could she have known? How could love, as it was presented to her, hide so effectively behind a curtain of zeros and ones? Months turned into a season of somber recovery, and slowly, Nikki began rebuilding her sense of self. She resumed her visits to the local library, reacquainted herself with forgotten books, and began to take long walks along Edinburgh's historic streets. The city, with its cobbled alleys and age-old monuments, offered a stark contrast to the cold, clinical betrayal of the digital realm, a reminder that true connection was still possible in the tangible world, in the rustle of pages and the warmth of human smiles. In a moment of poignant resolve, Nikki decided to share her story, not as a cautionary tale with a list of red flags, but as a narrative of human vulnerability, resilience, and the unexpected ways in which technology could change one's life. She wrote letters to old friends, participated in interviews for local newspapers, and even delivered a talk at a community center. Her recounting was raw and unfiltered, filled with the intimate details of a journey from hope to heartbreak and, eventually, to acceptance. Every time Nikki revisited that chapter of her life, the pain mingled with a quiet, burning determination, a determination to not let the cruelty of deception rob her of her capacity for love again. Though the scars remained, they transformed into a map of lessons learned, a reminder that the pursuit of connection was fraught with risks, yet always worth the courage it demanded. A Widow's Hope and the Silent Betrayal. Kate Kleinert's unwitting romance scam. Kate Kleinert had always believed in second chances. In the quiet suburbs of Pennsylvania, she had rebuilt her life after the loss of her husband, a loss that left a gaping void, but also a resilient hope to find companionship once more. At 62, Kate's gentle smile and soft-spoken nature had long been the hallmark of a woman who had weathered life's storms. She spent her mornings volunteering at the local library, her afternoons tending to a small garden bursting with marigolds and daisies, and her evenings writing letters to her daughter. Yet, beneath these simple routines lay a heart that longed for connection. Like many in the modern age, Kate eventually turned to the digital world to fill that longing, a place where distance and time could be bridged by a few keystrokes, and where messages and profiles promised the revival of a lost spark. It was on a cool autumn evening that she found him, a profile that radiated warmth and understanding. His name was Michael, and his profile picture showed him smiling against a backdrop of a sunlit park. What drew Kate in wasn't merely his handsome looks. It was the words in his introduction. Michael described himself as a widower much like Kate, with stories of gentle evenings, shared memories, and the hope of finding solace in one another. Their communication began tentatively. Kate sent him a message that evening, and soon enough, responses flowed like a gentle stream. Thoughtful, encouraging, and filled with the kind of nuanced understanding that only someone who had experienced loss could share. Over weeks of exchanging letters, phone calls, and even a few video chats, Kate felt her loneliness ebbing away. In Michael's words, she found echoes of her own grief and the promise of a future where companionship might mend her broken heart. Their conversations grew longer and more frequent. Michael recounted his days, the quiet solitude of his apartment in Pittsburgh, the comforting routine of his life, and his dreams for the future. Kate shared anecdotes about her beloved garden, the laughter of her daughter's childhood memories, and even details of her favorite books that had once united her family. In those nights of shared secrets and gentle confessions, Kate slowly began to see the world in color again. One chilly winter morning, amid the quiet hum of the neighborhood and the soft fall of snow outside her window, Michael confided in Kate about a financial emergency. He explained that due to unforeseen complications with his late wife's estate, he was unable to unlock a sum of money that was essential for caring for his ailing mother. His words, heavy with worry and wrapped in urgency, tugged at Kate's heart. She recalled the many times her own funds had been tight after her husband's passing, and in that moment, the roles of helper and healer seemed to reverse. Here was another soul in need, reaching out in vulnerability, and Kate could not ignore it. After some hesitation and many thoughtful conversations over the next few days, she decided to help. Kate arranged a bank transfer, sending a modest sum that she believed would bridge Michael's dire need. It was a decision born from empathy and the hope that by easing another's burden, she might nurture a connection that had already brought her solace. Michael's gratitude was immediate and effusive, emails filled with heartfelt thanks, assurances that this was but a temporary setback, and promises to pay back every cent as soon as his situation improved. In the weeks that followed, their relationship continued to grow, punctuated by more requests, small amounts at first. Each time, Kate's generosity swelled from her belief in the inherent goodness of human nature and in the promise of love rekindled. Michael's stories began to shift subtly toward more dire straits. His mother's health seemed to worsen, and unforeseen legal obstacles to accessing the funds became increasingly complex. All the while, Kate's heart was firmly tied to the man who had made her feel understood again. Every warm conversation, every shared memory, and every promise of tomorrow reaffirmed her decision. Slowly, however, what began as a gesture of kindness escalated into a repeated cycle of urgency. The frequency of Michael's requests increased, and soon the sums grew larger. For Kate, sending money became a part of the new rhythm of their relationship, a rhythm that echoed in the clicking of keys and the soft murmur of late-night phone calls. Each time she authorized a transfer, she reassured herself that her sacrifice was temporary, that love demanded a bit of hardship sometimes. But in the quiet shadows of her apartment, doubts began to stir. Kate recalled snippets of moments that felt too rehearsed, of questions that never found answers, of a man who, despite their closeness, was never quite tangible when reality called. Yet the emotional bond they had formed was too powerful to dismiss. The messages and calls were real, and Kate clung to every word as evidence that Michael was the companion she had yearned for. The turning point came on a bright spring afternoon. After a particularly long period of silence, with Michael's responses growing delayed and infrequent, Kate's intuition began to prick at the edges of her carefully constructed trust. With a hesitant heart, she reached out. The messages eventually came back, but they were different, more vague, filled with uncertain promises and half-explanations. A chilling realization slowly dawned on her. The consistency and detail that had once defined Michael's presence were now replaced by a growing emptiness. Late one evening, as the twilight deepened over Pennsylvania and the wind whispered through the trees outside her window, Kate discovered an online article about romance scams targeting widows. The story felt disconcertingly familiar, a victim whose tale mirrored her own, down to the pattern of appeals and the gradual financial erosion. With trembling hands, she searched for Michael's images online and soon found that his profile picture was used in multiple scam alerts and police bulletins. It was as though a veil had lifted, exposing a truth that stung with betrayal. Michael, the man who had rekindled her hope, was nothing more than a fabrication, an orchestrated lie designed to prey on a heart already too tender from loss. The financial aid she had given so willingly, totaling nearly $39,000, was gone, vanished into the digital ether, funneled away to faceless criminals whose only connection to her was the manipulation of her empathy. In those moments of despair and disbelief, Kate's world crumbled. The realization that someone had stolen not only her hard-earned money, but also the fragile promise of companionship left an indelible mark on her soul. Every shared memory and every whispered hope now felt tainted by the weight of deception. The online connection she had built became a reservoir of what-ifs and painful reflections. What if she had listened to the faint warnings? What if she had questioned more? What if love had been a mirage all along? The ensuing days were a blur of grief, regret, and anger. Kate withdrew from social circles, retreating into herself as the betrayal gnawed at her. The telephone that once rang with the promise of new messages now sat silent. Yet amidst the solitude, a spark of resilience began to kindle. Kate had always been a thinker, a retired lecturer who prized knowledge and understanding. While the wound of betrayal was deep, she resolved to seek answers, to understand how an insidiously crafted illusion could dismantle the very fabric of trust she had so carefully rebuilt. In a series of painstaking steps, Kate contacted local authorities and shared every detail of her interaction with Michael. She reached out to consumer protection agencies and even participated in a support group for romance scam victims. Each conversation was a reminder that she was not alone, that this pain, as personal as it was, had echoed in the hearts of many who had dared to trust in the digital age. Through tearful meetings and long nights of reliving the past, Kate slowly began to reclaim her narrative, transforming her heartbreak into a quiet defiance. Her journey was not an immediate recovery, but a gradual process of peeling away the layers of hurt and replacing them with cautious hope. Over time, she returned to her passions, reading in the library, tending her garden, and re-engaging with old friends. Though the lessons were learned the hardest way, Kate emerged with a renewed commitment not to let the cruelty of the scam dictate her entire story. Love, she understood now, could exist in many forms, and while the digital promises had proven fallible, real-world connections still held the potential for healing and joy. Though the financial loss remained a bitter reminder, it was the emotional wound that took longest to mend, the wound of having been seen not as a person with a story and a spirit, but as a target. Yet, in the quiet moments of self-reflection, Kate found strength in her vulnerability. Each day, she reminded herself that the betrayal was not a reflection of her worth, but of the callous tactics employed by those driven by greed. In the aftermath, Kate's life assumed a dual identity. By day, she was a gentle soul tending her roses and sharing quiet smiles with neighbors. By night, she became a determined advocate in support groups, speaking candidly about the perils of digital deception and offering empathy to others who had walked down similar, painful paths. Her story, though wrought with personal loss, became a beacon of resilience, a reminder that even in a world where shadows lurked behind every profile picture, a heart capable of hope could eventually find its way back to the light.